Hey guys, it's Marcus O'Malley from Chasing a Cup. We're here knocking it around. I've got a couple special guests. Peter Douthit from LA. Peter, how are you doing?
Good.
And is it
Thanks for having
Pete?
me,
Do you
Marcus.
prefer Pete?
Pete works, yeah.
Pete works. Yeah, that's cool. Sean Brooks from Nashville. How you doing, Sean?
I'm doing good.
Very good, very good. Yeah, welcome guys. So Pete is the host of 11 Yanks. YouTube. Pete, do you want to tell us anything about 11 Yanks, and then I can talk a little bit about your background?
Sure. Yeah, 11 Yanks is just a YouTube channel dedicated to the U.S. men's national team and all things American soccer, really, which I started about 6 months ago. So we put out weekly videos about that exact topic.
Yeah, it's awesome, man. I've really enjoyed it. I'm looking forward to, I think you dropped one today on the MLS roster, so looking forward to checking that out. Yeah, and you are a former coach. So I think you said that you were, working for Arsenal over in England. You've worked in India, in the Middle East. You've got a bachelor's of science in coaching. What else? You studied performance in football from Anglia Ruskin University in Cambridge. That's cool. And you've got a C license with the USA.
C license, yes.
Yeah, very cool. And then Sean, how you doing, man? What's you want to tell us a little bit about your site?
Yeah, I've got a website, Positional Play Scholar. It's pretty much a fan learning more about soccer tactics and exploring the ideas. We said earlier in our chat before that the fun is discussing things and having different opinions and kind of figuring things out. And that's really what it's about is I get ideas or thoughts in my head. I got to get it out. I want to share it and I want to talk about it. And so it's a way of doing that. It's that simple, really.
Yeah, no, I really enjoy it, man. I've enjoyed it. And you guys have a couple other writers on there too that I've seen around Twitter, yeah?
Yep. Yeah, Bob Morocco is there on there. He's pretty good, and I like his stuff a lot. He's a guy I've been chatting with for years.
Yeah, I've enjoyed following along. He's deeply analytical, which I really appreciate. And you're passionate about soccer as well. I think you have a E and a D coaching license, and you've coached travel teams and in the rec leagues as well, right?
Yeah, man, I'm a fan. I'm mostly a fan. I study it and I like diving into it and figuring it out. And I throw myself out there and love kind of hearing feedback and seeing what hits and doesn't hit. And so that's pretty much me.
Yeah. No, I love it, man. Well, we wanted to get together. Pete, you put a video out not too long ago talking about Berhalter and kind of analysis from the European friendlies that we just had. And Sean, you had put a piece out about Berhalter. And we were kind of talking before the show. It's like it's fun to have a conversation, in the age of Twitter and Instagram, and it's so easy to block or, mute someone if they don't agree with you. It's like, hey, let's have just a healthy conversation of, we're all cheering for the U.S. national team. We all want to have success. We're ready for a cup. I'm called chasing a cup. I want one. I'm not rooting against anybody.
You mean a gold cup, Marcus?
That's it. I'll take one of those too. But yeah, just want to talk Berhalter. We're on the eve of 2 years with him at the helm. Obviously this year was kind of a bust. I think it was December 2nd, 2018, when he came on board. And so Sean, wanted to lead off a little bit. You want to tell us kind of your take on Berhalter as a leader, as a tactician? What's your take on Gregg so far?
Yeah, so my take, I guess, can be broken down to three pieces, I guess. One has been fun. As a fan, as somebody who wants to kind of dive in and figure this stuff out and learn, he came in and you can tell he's developing a system with the team. And you can look back, there's a really cool Panama video did about when he first started. You can see the movements of the players. You can kind of see them learning it and going kind of slow, right? And you watch them today and see the cross movement in different patterns and zones, and you can see them doing fast and better and kind of cueing off each other. It's fantastic to kind of watch that progression from like where he started back then to now. So that's pretty cool. And then you can also watch like all the positional play stuff, where in terms of where their positioning is, where their runs are, how they're cueing off each other in terms of positioning and back and forth. All that stuff, man, you can kind of watch evolve, with the new players and as they coach them. So that's been, for the fan, that's just been really exciting to kind of learn as I go and kind of figure out what he's doing and why they're doing it and things like that. And then for me, the style of play is fun. Like I grew up with the things as you guys did, watching U.S. soccer where we were always underdogs pretty much. And we had counterattacking, we had guys that could do something, but to play the style proactive, we could held the ball and we could go at somebody and we could show we had some flair, the guys call it sauce, this last game, with some of the players we've gotten. And see them interchange and flow and play and see them win the ball back and keep the ball, not just take it. Like our players, our habit is take the ball and you go, and they send it usually, right? And it's like after a while when you watch, you get tired of that. because you want to see them control it and dominate and own that thing. And to see them transform from what they used to be, what I grew up with, to this kind of fun style of play, as a fan, man, that's just fun, right? To see them kind of evolve to that. The other two pieces I think will be production. Production is what we'll get onto in probably some. I think it's been fine. That's my probably controversial opinion. People can get into, how they're doing, but two, I guess, marks on the record would be Mexico, the Gold Cup, right? We would love to beat Mexico in that Gold Cup there, and then losing to Canada. To me, though, those are the only two marks. He still came out top in the goal in the group, with Canada. They still play a tight game with Mexico in a game that mattered. I can't ask for much more than that for me personally. All the friendly stuff, though, man, I know we all love U.S. soccer and we get into U.S. soccer and we get into watching every friendly, but friendlies are friendlies. I mean, we both coached. I mean, friendlies, you're working on this, you're working on that, you're figuring this out, you're trying this out. I just can't hold them too much on a friendly.
That's
There's just so many things going on.
Yeah.
And then so lastly, I guess, would be progression. Like, I've really enjoyed seeing them, the big question of both Berhalter with the system is complex and it's lots of new stuff, right? Can they do that in small windows? Can they build it and consistently across time? And it's cool to see them do that, to see, Leggett come in and play the same role as Jesus Vieira, to see his artists kind of come into the field doing some of the same runs, see some of the same play patterns you've seen previously, to see them build on those over time and see that kind of progression happen and kind of build it within the small windows they have has been pretty impressive. So overall, I'm excited and optimistic. That's generally what I am. So
yeah, I can see that. Pete, what's your take? 2 years in on Berhalter and anything that you pick out from what Shawn had to say. Any feedback on that?
Yeah, no, I think Shawn is 100% right in that it's clear what Berhalter is trying to do. He's articulated it pretty well, consistently over time, and you see small pieces of what he's trying to do. But I do think that when you talk about Berhalter as a national team coach, you kind of have to start with how he got the job. And that's always been a sticking point for me is it's pretty well known within U.S. soccer circles and even the fan circles that he got the job because of his brother. His brother was running the federation at the time, pretty much unofficially. Tata Martino was not given an interview, who I think a lot of us think should have been at least considered. Julian Lopetegui asked for an interview, was denied one. Like, they didn't really do a coaching search. They just handed it to his brother. Now, that doesn't mean he can't be successful. Because I think he can. But when you look at his CV, he did relatively well with the crew before he got the job, instilling a style of play with them. He didn't win a trophy, but they did have a very small budget, so he still exceeded expectations. What he did in Sweden before that was not great, but that was his first coaching job. I'm not going to hold that against him. So he's got the job now, and that's the reality. I think we all are like, okay, well, whether we like him or not, like you said, we all want the national team to be successful. But if we can at least admit he may not have been the best person for the job at the beginning, then it's easy for me at least to go, okay, he wasn't my first choice, but let's see what he can do now. And I think that for me, from a tactical perspective, watching him in 2019 was very different than watching him in 2020. Now, in 2020, we have a much smaller sample size, 3 games so far. But I've seen a lot more positives from him in 2020, less rigid, less I think fundamentally Berhalter is a very smart, intelligent tactician, and he thinks deeply about the game. And I think he had a lot of success implementing his ideas with the crew. And then he tried to do that with the national team in 2019. I think he overloaded them with a lot of information, and he called in a lot of players who I don't think were able to play that way. So I think that made it very, very difficult for the team. But in 2020, he has a better player pool to work with, for one thing. And we've also seen him adjust his tactics to the player pool more than trying to make the player pool fit his tactics. And I think that's been really positive this year.
Yeah, so you're touching on that. Give us some of the roster. Over 2 years. How have you thought of the roster selections? What are some of the strengths that you've seen? Some of the strengths that Berhalter specifically has brought to kind of the roster selection, and maybe some of the weaknesses. Pete, you want to start us off?
Yeah, I mean, I think in 2019 there were guys that I thought should have been involved with the roster much more than they were, from Anthony Robinson to Dwayne Holmes to even Josh Sargent, who was left out of the Gold Cup. And there were guys who were consistently called up that I personally don't think should be involved with the national team. Guys like Daniel Lovitz or Christian Roldan, or Will Trapp or Corey Baird. And it was difficult for me to see him passing over some more talented players in favor of these guys. And it was easy to think, well, maybe there is some requirement, some like from his bosses to get MLS players in there. And I like MLS players. I think there's a lot of really good ones. I'm excited for this game, especially. But I just think there are some MLS players, some players, period, not just in MLS, but in Europe, who aren't USMNT quality. And seeing him call them up so regularly in 2019 was frustrating. But in 2020, I felt he ditched a lot of those players in favor of more talented players. Now you could say, well, those players weren't ready in 2020. Like a Gio Reyna wasn't there in 2019, So that's certainly part of it. But there were other guys in 2019 that could have been there that weren't. So, but I am glad to see him adapting and changing and maybe calling in some better players now.
Do you think that 2020 is a good representation, or do you think obviously last month was specific to Europe, this month is kind of the young guys, do we know from 2020 that these are the guys that are going to be called in moving forward? Do you think we have any indication?
I mean, I guess we don't know for sure. Yeah. I'm optimistic though. I'm optimistic that just the sheer quality of the guys in Europe now will mean it'd be very hard for him to call up some of these guys who I don't think should be involved with the national team going forward. So I don't think he'll continue to call them up, but I just don't know.
What about you, Shawn? What's your take on 2 years of roster? And that last question that I asked, do you think 2020 is any indication of him changing, or was that sort of situational? It was a January camp, a December camp, and a Europe only camp. So I think it's hard to know, but what do you think?
I think it's just progression of the program. I mean, the most exciting thing about U.S. program is we're having a pipeline, right? I've said this several times in different places that we've really liked that in the past, where you could find players like Chris Richards and he could have a place to get where he's at now, right? Yeah. That's unbelievable. I was born in Alabama. The fact that he could come from Alabama and be in Bayern is just crazy. And so we have a pipeline now that's coming up from the small gaps of the U.S. to pro teams we didn't have, and we're starting to see that. And I don't usually get too wrapped into call-ups because if you look at Arena and you look at Klinsmann and look at Berhalter in the same kind of tight window where they're all kind of coaches in the same 6-9 months, right? They called the same players, started the same players mostly, okay? Because the best 11 players are generally those best 11 players. And then you have all these kind of guys on the fringes, and you can debate those every day, all day. Every club team you watch, they debate the guys on the fringes, and you can do that. And that's fine, that's cool. You want to talk about even whoever's kind of interchangeable, that's cool. I think that before this last year, we haven't had the talent that the U.S. wanted to play the style for Halter, and we all want to play. We haven't had it, okay? If you look at Bruce Arena, okay, against Trinidad versus him with Donovan and Dempsey, okay? It's just a different thing, right? Same coach, okay? Same kind of mentality, same to come in. But the player pool is different. We had a big gap. And I think what you saw in that year of last year was him using the player pool he had, okay, in the system, player profiles, positions he could fill to do the things he wanted to do, the crosses in, to be that kind of number 8, kind of drive the ball up down the field, right? He needs somebody to do that thing, and that's the best they had to do those things, or close. So you can say Rodon versus Holmes, and in the end, it's going to be Musso, it's going to be McKinney, or it's going to be guys that aren't quite ready yet. And in the end, when we get to qualifying next year in the World Cup, it's none of those guys. And that's what I've been saying is that patience. Levitt's, who's cool at Nashville, man. He's at Nashville. He's a good guy, okay? But he's likely not going to be our starting left back in the World Cup, okay? And I don't think anybody who was going to that Gold Cup really thought he was going to be starting left back in the World Cup. We had all these guys coming up, all right? And so to me, that's where it's at. That's going to be the caveat by Berhalter, okay? I mean, as much as I like the guy, that's what we're doing. It's players. I mean, we've all coached, right? There's sometimes you don't have the horses, and you just kind of go, I don't have the horses. There's no tactical brilliance that's going to change that, okay? Yeah. And I think that's a lot of what we're seeing. And what we're seeing this year, what's so exciting this last friendly is you're seeing some of that talent right there. You're seeing three guys in midfield, man, with something I can't think we had a kind of range and technical ability to pass out of pressure and dribble out of pressure and do things. I don't know when we had that before. And so I think that as we go from now, next couple of years, that's going to be the fun part. Is we got to see the next wave. So yeah, I don't usually get too much into whether it's Holmes or Rodon. It's going to be neither one of those guys probably in the end.
You mentioned, kind of moving his tactics along. We've seen the infamous inverted right back and, 2 8s, 2 10s, the 4-2-3-1. What do you think he's trying to accomplish? And do you think we saw, again, kind of same question about the roster, like, are we seeing in 2020 where it's transitioning to as he's growing as a coach, or do you think it just kind of was working with the player pool that he had? What do you think, Shawn?
I think it's player pool we had. I mean, in the end, what he wants is either a 3-2-2-3 in possession or a 2-3-2-3, depending on how they're kind of coming out in the backside, right? If they got what kind of zones are in the back, or they're going to have 2 or 3 in the back. Otherwise, they want that same piece. And then it becomes how do you get them? I think what he's doing differently, and people are kind of comfortable with, is he's starting with that and then working how to get there. He wanted Adams in that 3-2-2-3, Adams at midfield and that box midfield. Okay, we all want that. Now, whether he got them there from the right back in that position or he got them there from a 6 in that position, he still wanted him in that position. All right. And so I see, and even now, it's where he's going to be in that position. Okay. And so I think that, well, now it's maybe something different. But the idea, though, is they're going to try to still get to that place. Same thing with, I mean, look at the big thing was a false 9, right? With Legit, which I thought too when I saw Legit's name on there. He wasn't a false 9. He played it the exact same way that Jesus Ferreira played it. It's some false 9 qualities. It's a very modern striker. He can come to midfield, but also get forward and do a little bit of target stuff. But it's just really about getting who he has in those kind of profiles and making it all work together. I think as we get better and the pipeline gets better, that just gets better and better and better.
Pete, what do you think? What do you think about, what he's trying to accomplish? And then, is he playing to the pool? Is he trying to find the pool that fits there? What's your take on kind of, his lineup?
Yeah, I think when he started off with that 3-2-2-3, as we're calling it, that was basically done to accommodate what he called I call it a regista. That's very European, but it's like a deep lying playmaker, number 6, the Michael Bradley, Jackson Ewell, Will Trapp character. And those are really good in terms of what they can do. The problem is they don't always protect the back line very well. And so I think what Berhalter was trying to do was get Tyler Adams at right back and then have him shift into that sort of 6 role to help protect the back line when we didn't have the ball, I wanted Michael Bradley gone from the program at that point. So that frustrated me. I was like, I never wanted to see Will Trapp involved. I just don't think he's one of those guys that weren't USMNT quality. I wanted Tyler Adams at the number 6 with 2, dual 8s in front of him, which now Berhalter has transitioned to. He might have transitioned to it sooner, but Tyler Adams was injured for a year. So he really only used that system. It was Nick Lima temporarily and then Tyler Adams very shortly. So, yeah, now we've really seen that. I was surprised that Jackson Ewell wasn't in this latest roster. As I understand it now, he's going to be, I heard today, But as I understand, I was like, so there's no Michael Bradley who's available, no Will Trapp who's available, and no Jackson Ewell. Does that mean that Berhalter has abandoned the idea of a deep-lying central playmaker and gone with a normal 6 and allowed our dual 8s to press higher up the field and get more creativity from a high press instead of a sort of Andrea Pirlo style, player? And the other thing that he really liked, Berhalter, especially in 2019, was this idea of overloading one side of the field and then, drawing the attack over to that side and then having your number 6 switch the ball to a overlapping fullback and then with a quick cross or one touch often into the box to create a chance that way. And he seems so stubborn about this idea, which is not a bad idea, but I think it's very easy to defend against if you understand what the other team is trying to do. So I was frustrated that he continued to build his team around one play, which is relatively easy to scout and defend against, But like I said, now he seems to have changed that idea, and he seems to be adapting to a player pool. I mean, when I saw Tyler Adams, Weston McKennie, and Yunus Musa in midfield, that's a strong, athletic midfield that can high press when we don't have the ball, but is also technical enough to play possession football when we do have it, Go ahead, Shawn.
Yeah, I don't think he's evolved, though. I think that the 6 is still what they want to do the 6 to do, to be able to be that register, be that kind of possession controlling center guy in the back right there, okay, to help control the possession, do high percentage passing you want to see. And you saw Adams play that role in the last game. He did that very, very well. And I think he still wants, and they need at some level, some degree of deep line playmaker, because you still want to do those switches. I still think they want to overload one side and switch it. It's not the play, it's one play. It's the only play that worked for us. We had Bradley in there, but it's one piece of the solar system. It's a whole proximity superiority where they want to try to build up on one side, get really pull them in close, and then switch it and find the open man, find the free man. That's still a play. That's still what they want to do. one problem we have to figure out is, can Adams do all that? And I think he'll develop where he can. But I think in the last game we saw, he was missing those passes. They were relying on Brooks, actually. Brooks to hit those long balls to find that weak side over there instead of Adams. They were relying on Ream, who's actually pretty good at doing that, hitting that long diagonal ball to find that weak side over there. And so they still want that play, and we don't need to depend on the CB. I mean, I want CB to be able to do it. Don't get me wrong. That's when we have a passing CB there. But you want the 6 to be able to do that as well. The other problem we ran into in the last game that I think shows they need that role and need Adams to develop in that role is when the biggest way we're stopping the U.S. right now is flooding the middle with press. Now, they didn't want to do that against us this last game because they were really vulnerable to the backs, right? We could kill them with our pace and ability. So they waited until they were behind. But once they started flooding that press, we again had trouble either passing out of it or hitting the right vertical ball, okay, to get more verticality, as Berhalter would say, to get them over the top. It's how we beat Canada, right? We hit Areola, we hit Morris over the top into those wings, and they started pressing us really hard. We found the places over the top to hit them. So we need that 6, that little bit of deep line playmaker to be able to be one of those guys that can hit those passes and find those spaces when they press us, when they find us pushed and tight. Because really, right now, if I'm opposing guys with the U.S., that's how I'm going to try to beat you. I'm going to try to press you and flood the middle. Now, it's harder. We've got those 3 guys we played last game. That's still what I'm going to try to do, right? Because that's where the weakest is, find the weak spot in our back line or in our midfield so we can win the ball and get a score. The only answer that I like the Berhalter. He's got a reaction to that. They planned that to go that long, to get that long guy. We've just kind of sucked at hitting it. And so we've got to find guys that can do that. Matt Biazza couldn't do it, right? He missed it at several times. Only because we had the whole game was Brooks for one game and it was Ream the next. We've got to have more guys that can hit those spots.
Pete,
yeah, I think that's definitely true. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Marcus.
No, I was just going to say anything to add to that, Pete. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. For example, if we're talking about the Wales game, you're right. Adams did miss a lot of those passes. I think part of the problem is he didn't have runners. So there was a problem because Gio Reyna was playing on the right wing. And if you're going to play with a false 9, your wingers have to get in behind because your false 9 is dropping in to create overloads in midfield. And then ideally, at least one center back would come up with him. And that then creates space for your wingers to make those runs. That's not really Gio Reyna's strength. If you look at how he plays for Dortmund, he's the guy that finds the runner. He's more of a playmaker. He gets way more assists than he gets in behind the back line. So what happened is Gio Reyna ended up tucking inside. And then you had Conrad de la Fuente tucking inside. And you had Sebastian Lletget coming deep. And it created a very crowded, narrow midfield that made it difficult for Adams or anybody really to find runners in behind. Now, I don't know if that was intentional or if Gregg Berhalter instructed his wingers to go in behind and they just didn't do it enough. Maybe the message didn't get across. They had 2 days of training, so that's very possible. But I do think that if we're going to play that way, either your wingers have got to stretch that back line or you're going to have a 9 who stretches that line as well and who plays higher up the field without congesting them.
What I think they want to do is they want to have them piston, right? They want to have the striker. You watch it in the early games where they're trying to learn how to do this. When the striker comes up and those 2 guys, the two wingers basically cut in, push up the back line to find the lane. You saw actually with Jesus Vieira, they were finding that lane with Morris, okay? Because whenever Jesus came up, kind of like a false 9-ish, right? Then the 2 wingers would push up in the back line to create that wing. It's great runs on that. Reyna and Conrad just need to work on that. I honestly think the reason why the Jets started was so Reyna and Conrad have somebody to work off of and learn off of. I guarantee you there's tape right now Berhalter and staff looking at showing Reyna and showing Conrad right here. You guys should have been right here. This is when they team up. That was your cue to press the back line. When he presses the back line, your cue was to come up and be that playmaker you want to be. But they want them coming back in the midfield, Reyna and Conrad and Pulisic, to be those 10s, right? To create space, to create shots, to create passes. But it's got to be in the right movement of the rest of the team, right? So it should be when the striker comes up and 2 wingers come up and those guys go forward and then vice versa. So that way you can do both. You have both options. And the really cool part about that is they use that dynamic superiority stuff where they time it really well. Reyna doesn't have to be that super fast dynamic Pulisic to get in behind the line. It's all the timing. He knows kind of like a football in an option read system, right? Where the receiver knows the read and can break right when the QB throws it. Same thing with this. If the winger can read that run right when Adams has the ball at the same time, they're on the same page and they get behind that line without needing super fast guys to get behind the line. So I really do think that was just coaching. That's why I legit started, I think.
Yeah. So switching gears a little bit, you know, we'll swing back through some of these tactics. I'm loving this conversation personally, just geeking out listening to you guys. But how do you think Pete lead off? You know, Berhalter's done with the dual nats. You know, anything you know that he's done well? I mean, or you know, do you credit that to Brian McBride, or you know, what's kind of your take on some of this? You know, we've seen obviously clearly a lot of exciting dual net, you know, even in this MLS camp coming up. You know, any thoughts that way?
Yeah, I mean, 10 out of 10. I mean, the guy, okay, Serginho Dest was the first big coup, right? You know, that was the one where, you know, and of course, Serginho Dest admitted a lot of that was being involved with the youth teams, but still, Berhalter went over there with Ernie Stewart and they made the effort to really make sure he was ours. So that was great. And then Yunus Musa, another massive coup. I mean, you know, I don't think any of us thought we had a chance in hell of landing Musa. And so that's a huge feather in Berhalter's cap. And the fact that within a couple of months of getting appointed, he went to see Efra, you know, and just said, look, I know whatever happened in the past, I'm sorry, but we want you to be part of our program. That now we're seeing the benefit of that 2 years later, where Efra's finally been like, okay, I'll come have a look. And you know, I heard he talked to Jens Kajust over in Sweden, who ended up picking Sweden, but he did the work of talking to him. Johnny Cardoso in Brazil. I'd say 10 out of 10 as far as his recruiting of dual nationals. And even if you look at this latest camp, how many dual Mexican nationals that I know that Tata has been going after? So David Ochoa in goal, Julian Araujo, Frankie Amaya. There was one more who, you know, was also.
What was the late entry? No. There's one more.
There was one more. I can't remember who it was. Efra, of course.
Oh, right. Yeah, you said him. Yeah.
You know, and then, of course, Io Akinola is being courted by Canada. So the fact that, like, he brought everybody in, like, hey, we're going to use this window to convince you to come play for us was really good to see.
Yeah. Any thoughts there, Shawn?
Yeah, I mean, obviously those are all big, cool stuff. And I'm excited about it too. And Berhalter says what his kind of method is, right? Great, cool environment, good environment. They enjoy being here and being part of this crew, and we keep them. And that's really cool to say. What I wonder, people talk about the process of hiring Berhalter and the process of getting Ernie Stewart and what he did. And what I do at work is a lot of change management stuff at work, right? So I wonder how much changes behind the scenes, and I wonder how much this is McBride. And how much this is about the team, the structure of the reorg of U.S. soccer to having a true structure. We've heard a lot in the past about how Berhalter said, I didn't have time to do all these things, to build relationships with the club so we can get guys when we want to get them, to recruit these guys and keep them engaged. So, and plus watch all these videos, all these, I mean, we have, how many prospects do we have now to watch now, right? And they got to watch all these videos of all these prospects plus figure out tactics. So I've got to wonder how much this is McBride or somebody. They've built some systems in there to do a lot of this, kind of keeping them in touch and keeping them engaged and keeping them built in. And if that's the case, then that time was well spent in building this organization, right? That stuff is hard to track from the outside, right? It's really hard to explain how long it takes to build committees and talk committees and doing things and to go and have a consultant come in and do an assessment and making it happen. That stuff is harder than it sounds. Okay, is all I'll say. And I wonder how much of that stuff is showing fruit in things like this, because I like Berhalter. We didn't see some of this stuff though last year, and I wonder just what else is happening behind the scenes that we aren't seeing that's going to help them win these guys over and make it a case.
Yeah, I have to agree with you there. I think it is a collective effort. I think, you know, I was honestly personally skeptical. I love Brian McBride as a player, but when I saw like another teammate, you know, coming to work for, I was like, oh man, they are not getting rid of this good old boys club look, you know, outside looking in, but you know, they're delivering. I think I saw Berhalter credit Odasawi with McBride being the one, but I've seen a number of players. I know personally, I heard that, you know, he reached out to Cappy, you know, Christian Kappis, and told him that, you know, hey, you're not going to be on the Euro, but we're watching, you know, and talk to him personally. Like those little things matter. As you mentioned, Shawn, you know, that's part of the culture of the locker room. You know, I very specifically remember after the Canada game, like just how quiet it was. You could tell Pulisic was upset. I saw Yedlin walking. I'm like, man, that does not look like a good locker room right now. But then this year, they're just friendlies. You know, there's no pressure. You know, obviously losing a game is gonna change the locker room dynamic. But it just seems like the guys are having fun together. And I think, you know, some of that's coming up playing together. They have a group chat. You know, I think it's this generation, our pals. But that's got to bleed into the culture. And I do think, you know, Berhalter deserves some credit. You know, he's obviously spoken about it. And several players have mentioned him specifically as a guy that's reached out and they've appreciated and connected with. So I think he's got to get some credit there.
Yeah, For sure. I think just real quick, there was a story about that I read. I think it was on Twitter of somebody involved in the analytics department in U.S. soccer, and Berhalter coming up to him and saying, "What about this guy who plays in the third division in Spain, who's like a quadruple national or something? Why is he not on the list? Because they have lists." And he's like, "I didn't know who this guy existed." So the fact that Berhalter's going in there and being like, "Why is this guy not on the list?" just gives me comfort that they're tracking everybody, you know. And even the way when Uli Yanez made his debut here in LA, they brought his whole family. U.S. Soccer brought his whole family to the game. They had a photo op with him. You know, you could see them really trying to connect these dual nationals and with their families and saying, "Hey, we want your kid to be a part of it." And you see the pride and joy in the parents when their kids get called up or when they do well, and that's really inspiring to see.
No, absolutely. Yeah, no, cool. I agree with that. So Gregg has brought up, you know, at the beginning that playing out of the back, line breaking passes, creating chances. Those were kind of the core, you know, three items that, you know, you kind of heard drilled over. And I actually really appreciated that, honestly, personally, that they were so transparent. I feel like he's the first coach in a couple that was actually putting, you know, himself on the line and saying, "This is what I'm trying to accomplish," very transparently. I remember him drawing on, you know, the TV screen. So I did appreciate that. And I guess, you know, kind of from that, you know, that it's a double-edged sword, right? Because then you can evaluate someone when they tell you what they're trying to accomplish. So Shawn, let's start with you on, you know, build up out of the back. You know, how have we done? Have we been successful at it? You know, I know you mentioned Brooks and Adams earlier, but, you know, do you see that being successful? Do we need to change it? You know, or is it the wrong players? You know, what are you seeing and what's your take on build out of the back?
Well, I love it in concept, right? In theory, I love that style of play. I've just watched Ajax and Liverpool, right? Ajax pass out Liverpool is just fantastic. That's what you want to see, right? Almost like it's nothing. You know, Liverpool's press, no big deal. We can do that. You want to see that. Obviously, USA is not there. And so when they played against Mexico, it was one of the best tests about that. And I know people got onto them, the friendly, they got killed. They were working on that. They were trying to show, can we do this? And the answer is no. That group they had, they could not do it, okay? And that's where I think it's going to take progression. I mean, even against these two friendlies, I really think Brooks, of course, did a good job. I think Ream is underrated because of that. He can handle the pressure and pass out of the back. His technical skills are good. That's why he's there. I thought Matt was a problem. I thought that his defending he's good, okay, but his passing is really bad and his touch is not great. I thought you saw a huge difference when you've got Des on one side just dribbling through that pressure, all right, and you got the other side, Reggie and them having problems passing out of the back. You saw some bad passes. You saw a couple of missed passes where the pass was to Ream in space across the way. It's a really good picture of that one, right? And he's still trying to do a small pass into six with no space. They lose the ball. And it's just things like that we're not there yet as some of these players. But we're getting there. And the answer is, can we do it well enough to qualify first, right? And I think so, because our competition is not going to be those not going to be the super tight ones we had to fight, you know, to get out of there. So I think we're fine there. The question is going to be, can we get good enough before the World Cup just to have a good showing against teams like, you know, they really can hit us hard with that. And that's really going to be about youth development. That's going to be, you know, can Chris Richards break into Bayern more than this kind of spotty starter and become one of those roles? I think he can. Can we find a real right back or left back that can both do those things besides just death, that can play in those tight spaces and not just be the athletic guy that kind of can bomb forward, right? Can we really do all those kind of things? I don't know the answer. I think that's going to be the test of the next year or so. We got to find those guys and find really the back line more than anything. I think you can see a huge difference in playing on the back and pressure with Morris and Areola, right? When we tried to, they couldn't do it. We could hit them over the top. We could score goals. Okay, that's cool. Okay, but we try to play to them at their feet and then play back or then play through the midfield. They couldn't do it. Of course, Reyna and Conrad can. Okay, they were really good at playing those tight spaces. So you know, to me, it's development. We've got to keep developing. Got to keep finding guys. Got to keep pushing. I think that if Berhalter was the coach last cycle, horrible. He would not survive like 6 months, okay, because of the talent pool we had. I think he's going to be putting him like he is now, with talent pool coming up, the pipeline creating, and it could be something special. So yeah, I think it's all about talent development.
Pete, same question or anything in response to Shawn about playing out, specifically just the playing out of the back piece.
Yeah, I think when you're playing out of the back, you have to start with why are you doing it, right? And a lot of people think that it's a stylistic choice because some of the best teams in the world play out of the back, but it's really not. I mean, the whole point of playing out of the back is you want to invite the other team forward and find space, either behind them or in between them, okay? And so when you're playing out of the back, you're always going risk versus reward. Ideally, in an ideal world, you have a 3 or 4 man press that comes forward, but you can overload them. And then when you've got in behind them, you now have a major overload in behind them because so many of their players have committed forward. But there's a fine balance there, because when that becomes a 6-man press or a 7-man press, I don't think, now there are some coaches who will insist on trying to play through that. And you can maybe do it 1 or 2 times out of 10, especially with our players. But I think the vast majority of the time, that's a success. Like against Mexico, especially in the second half, this is the friendly. They saw us doing it consistently. And so Tata Martino instructed the press to get even higher, put that line of confrontation higher up the field, and they would have a 6-man press. And that is the perfect time to then hit with them with a long diagonal and take advantage of the space in behind. So I think for Berhalter, I assumed that he was being very stubborn about that idea of we need to play out of the back, we need to play out of the back, without realizing that the whole point of playing out of the back is to create space. And it's a success. If they're pressing you that high, you now have space in behind. He has said to the media that, yes, ideally we would like to go in behind if they press us super high in those high numbers. I haven't seen it done yet. So I'm going to hold off my sort of judgment of it. I like what he's trying to do, but I just think they need to understand the caveats and the nuances, that there's a time to play out of the back and there's a time where you just can't do that, you know?
Sean, follow up to that, and if you want to add line breaking passes piece, you know, how have we done with that as you wrap up your response?
Yeah, am I going next?
Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, no, I agree. There's time to do it, time you don't do it. There's time to go over the top, and he says need more verticality in the play. I do think though that in this coach it was 2 things. Friendly. One, it was, they were working on it. You could see them doing passes again and again. That I think they were trying to press it. And I think there's a time where you can't work on it anymore. To your point, it's like, no, this is the time you don't do it. And I think they didn't adjust. The players were still trying in that mindset. They worked so hard on doing this. They weren't thinking to go vertical. You saw them try to adjust. I think the biggest example of them adjusting was the two different Canada games. Say in Canada game, we were hitting those vertical passes. We were hitting Morris and Areola in terms of getting those spaces, because we were trying to get in behind them. I think the reason we could say we already knew that was Mexico in the Gold Cup. We didn't try to pass through that press in the Gold. When the game mattered, when we cared about the score and we cared about winning, we went to off the door, Pulisic, try to go direct. Okay, we saw pressure coming. We knew that they knew we were going to try to go through our 6, right? So Tata brought pressure to the 6. What do? We found Josie, found Pulisic, and had a lot of close chances in the early part of the half against the Gold Cup. So I think it's part of the plan. It's part of, and there is a. And this is, you get to the question about his adjustments. I think that there is a pre-planned setup of what they want to do, how they want to handle pressure, how they want to react to things, how they want to go vertical versus close based on how the other team does to react. I don't know that he has a great in-game adjustment, but when it comes to having a plan for everything, I think they've done that. I think they tried to do that. I think that the U.S. just isn't as good as some of that. I mean, we saw Canada, we're hitting those direct passes from our fullbacks or our center backs to our wingers, to Morris and to Areola, and you saw the heavy touch, right? They need to control that, or they control that and turn and find the next line to make the break, okay? Deep line pass doesn't mean it goes off full length of the field, right? It can go right to the winger, to a control, like a target man from a winger, and control and go off the wing. That's what they wanted. You can see even Brooks waving guys in, right, to come back. They should be pissing even from there. So the wingers come back, they piss him back to him, hit him off, and the other guy's already making a break. The striker making a break in the space, right? So it should be that kind of setup, and they worked on that. But I think in the Mexico game, you saw them working so heavily on the playing on the back that the players just didn't react when the pressure came. And then we saw against Canada, we didn't have the players. We didn't have the horses that when we play to the wingers, they can control it well, hit and do some two-touch passes to break through the way you see Ajax doing. What you saw instead is you saw them heavy touching it and then scrambling to find the ball, right? Until the only thing really works then with those guys, because they're fast, they're big, athletic, was over the top, right? And that worked. So I think there is a plan. I think it's keep working on it until you're the right guy that can do it, right?
How about chances in the final third? Have you seen that? Do you think we're producing that, with this, build up from the back, the line break, you mentioned the heavy touches, but, are you seeing chances being created? Do you feel like we're headed in the right direction, with the right player pool? What do you think, Sean? Yeah, just wrapping up. Yeah, just wrapping up.
Sorry. Yeah, we're getting there. So this last game with Reina and Conrad, I already talked about. They didn't make the right runs. Okay, so when Jet came back, you should have seen Reina and Conrad pissing forward. That gave them the breakthrough. We saw those happen really well with other folks, with Jesus, right? We saw Morris getting behind because they did those things really well. We do have a plan when they're back in a really tight bundle. I watched Ajax and Liverpool trying to pass to each other. You can't even do it at that level, okay? And they're crazy level high, right? They can't do it. But what you do is you do what Pete said earlier. You try overload one side, find combination play, and then switch it to find the back post, which we did really well in the Gold Cup, okay, with Bradley in there. So it's all about reacting to what they do, and I think they've got a plan for all those things. That's what's really cool. You can see the plan develop, work on that. How they do that is really based on the player pool and how much time they have to work on it. And you got that trade-off, okay? When you have players like Ariola or Morris who've worked on it now with full camps and multiple times, they know where to go. You can see them break it, okay? But they don't have the touch. They don't have the connection that you have in Reina and Conrad. But Conrad and Reina haven't had the time in the system, okay? So you see them playing against Wales. They don't know how to break. They don't know how to read it and make that same run. So you've got this kind of both ways. It's not quite working, okay? So what we have to do is just keep working time in the system, build it up. I think one thing he's done really well that's underrated is they're slowly integrating guys in and keeping consistency, even with its lesser players. So the Jet being that example in that striker role, right? So they can work on the movements of Conrad and Reina, okay? So if they just threw in somebody brand new there who didn't know how to make the runs either, you got 3 guys who can't run, and now I can't coach you because I can't show you that when the Jet went up, you should have gone there because the Jet didn't go up, right? So you've got to I think they've done a good job of trying to filter guys in so they can work on those things and get better and better at it. And I think we've seen plans for those breakthroughs, those little on-breaking passes. It hasn't really come off consistently enough to be excited about, right? We can just do it every time we come out there.
Yeah, Pete, what's your take?
Yeah, I think with creating chances in the final third, you have to be able to find the balance between coordinated tactical movements, which is what Berhalter is trying to do, and also understanding that particularly with the international game, there's a certain mindset that a player can get into. It's just called flow. And when a player is playing in flow, oftentimes they make good decisions based on instinct, based on 15 or 20 years of being drilled to play a certain way, to make decisions based on flow. And sometimes what happens, and I saw this a lot in 2019, and I even saw it a little bit in 2020 with the small sample size, that what happened is when players were receiving the ball, instead of going instinctively to what their most natural next movement would be, you could see them sort of playing within themselves and trying to figure out, what was I supposed to do in this situation based on the tactical plan? And oftentimes that led to a tentativeness that then doesn't allow for that creativity and spontaneity, and it's not that you can play, just let your forwards go and be like, play instinctively. And it's not that you can force everyone into a complex, hard and fast tactical system. So I think just finding that balance of like a Gio Reyna at Dortmund or a Christian Pulisic at Chelsea is going to do certain things that you're not going to plan for tactically. They're just not. And that's okay. And sometimes they're going to be able to unlock defenses with their natural talent and instinct of playing a certain way. And I hope, and I think based on recent events that Berhalter can adapt to that and isn't simply going to, have his guys play the way he wants them to play and say there's no room for creativity or improvisation based on the problems you face on the field.
Yeah, so plans are great, right up until they're not. And how Pete, have you seen his in-game adjustments? So it's great to come with a plan and a strategy, but then you get hit in the face and whatever it may be, whether it's the player pool, injuries, tactics, or you're down a goal. Like how have you seen his in-game adjustments? Are positive or not?
Yeah, I think that's one of his strongest weaknesses as far as
I agree.
Berhalter has not yet proven that he can adapt to something that's not going well. And that's worrying because so much of competitive soccer, we saw this, I think the first time we really saw it was in the Gold Cup final where Tata Martino saw what we were doing. He saw Reggie Cannon becoming, being able to shut down Pizarro quite well, switched him over to the other side, and we didn't plan for that at all. There was multiple things that went wrong in that game that he didn't adapt to, and you could see Martino doing it. And then again, when we played Mexico the second time, and for the record, I don't think there's any such thing as a friendly against Mexico. Every country in the world has that one team that this is a rivalry game. It is always a must win or a try your hardest to win. It's not this is my personal opinion. Mexico is not a time to test how well you can, try something different and new. And Tata Martino adjusted. He said, they're trying to play out of the back. We're going to press high. And they got 2 of their 3 goals that way. And then with substitution patterns, some of them against Canada when we lost 2-0 in the Nations League, it wasn't working. He pulled off Christian Pulisic, who admittedly was not having a good game, but is still your most dangerous player. In the Gold Cup final, Daniel Lovitz was his solution to getting a goal. I just don't think he understands really what's going on or what's going wrong and how to fix it. Or if he does understand it, he hasn't communicated that well on the field. So he hasn't been able to transmit that to his players. And I think that's something I'm going to keep watching for going forward, because the only time I really saw him adjust well was when he had time to adjust. So before the second Canada game, like Shawn said earlier, he's like, we know Canada's going to push their fullbacks really high, so we're going to use the verticality of Morris and Ariola to get in behind them. Well done. That was good to see. Can he do it in game? That the jury is out on him, I think.
Go ahead, Shawn.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think that, so I kind of relate. I see him as an analyst. Okay. I think he's really good at breaking down, analyzing what happened and fixing it. I think he comes up with, I think he's one of those guys, if you're in these meetings, he plan every detail around every possibility. I think he has those plans. Okay. I think Lovett's thing, I think that the plan was that, if you remember, it was Ream playing on that left side, right? Playing like a 3 in the back and tucked in. He wanted Lovett to come up and cross in. That was the plan. Now, was that the right plan to match what was going on in the moment? I don't think so. I think it was the plan he had in that moment, pre-planned based on what he thought before the game started. Okay. And I think that's how he does things. I think he's got multiple scenarios planned out, and they figure what they want to do beforehand. I don't think he does a lot of in-game adjustments very well. I think Tata is a great example. He did that every time he played him, okay, where he did 2 things. First thing he did in the Gold Cup was he saw we were playing through Bradley. What they do? He's rusty, crowded, he didn't have the ball, okay? That's one thing. He, like you said, he saw that we were shutting down one side. He twisted the other side. These are not things you pre-plan. These are not things you go, well, when this happens, I'm going to do this, okay? Because you can't think of, much as I try, you can't think of everything that's going to go happen in any given moment, right? And I think that's where he kind of comes down. I think he has plans for everything. Like I said, the Lovitz thing was a plan. When they pack back, we're behind, we're going to throw more guys forward, we're going to cross things in. Lovitz is a guy who's really good at crossing. That's why he was there. And so we'll push him up and have him do that. That didn't really respond to all the things going on in the game. It was just his, plan C in his book. And I think that's probably his biggest weakness. I don't know you're going to see a lot of adjustment on that. I think that's a little bit of personality and ability and who they are. Maybe you will. People can always develop and change. And I think if we create the style of play and create the system and create a foundation, and we get in the World Cup and we kind of, all the young talents coming through, and we can build on that for the next cycle and so forth, I'm cool with that. I don't know that we'll, and again, I like the guy, but I don't know that we're ever going to see him out-coach some of the best coaches out there and things like that in game adjustments. And I'm okay with that. For what we're getting.
You mentioned 2022. What are your aspirations for Berhalter over the next 2 years? What do you expect of him over the 2 years in the World Cup? And what does he need to do to keep his job for 26 if he were to continue on as coach? What do you think?
So, when you're in your career in the organization, right, they say there's some things to watch out for. And the big thing you can do is who do you follow and when you come into the organization, all right? That can dictate your success and your view and perception of where you go. Berhalter is very good and well set up to come in behind Clemson Arena in a cycle where we didn't qualify, all right? His bar right now is actually pretty low, okay? Build a system, look good, these guys look good, and qualify. And that's all he really has to do. Now, he goes in and gets embarrassed in the World Cup, that may change, okay? That may there's exceptions to that, but we didn't qualify the World Cup, okay? We didn't even get in. And so for people like me anyway, that's the bar. Now, after that, the bar goes up, and that's where it gets harder to reach. I think that's where he's at. And I think also he's in there because we went through another cycle of our team. We have a brand new cycle of young players coming up that are going to get their first experience in a World Cup and their first experience playing in these games. So he also gets another kind of mulligan, or mulligan's the wrong word, but he gets a chance to have to not do the top level he could be, and then they're going to come in their prime the next cycle, and then of course he's got to be much better. So I think for me the bar is lower than a lot of people like it. He's got to look good, the system's got to look good and flow. He's got to see the system and see how it works. It's got to be effective, and you got to qualify.
What would it take for him to keep the job for 26? What would you expect, or do you expect that this is his run and we'll see somebody new in the next cycle regardless of performance? What do you think, Shawn?
I mean, I said, yeah, he got for 26. You went
No,
after that?
like to
After he
keep his
finished the World
job.
Cup?
Yeah, like is there
Yeah.
a bar? Does he need to get to the quarters, the semis to keep his job?
No, the thing, he's got to qualify and get in. Yeah, got to qualify and get in, not be embarrassed. I know it sounds horrible for 22. Now 26 to go beyond that, think about a whole new cycle. We got to see how they did and what we think we can rise to. That's where, you think about a lot of these sport teams, and you have a coach who gets you started, who gets you built up, and you bring in, you bring in somebody who can then be the guy, right? That may happen. I don't know what the answer until we see how they look in the World Cup. So I think that his bar is low to survive through the World Cup. After that, man, it's going to depend on how we look and what the next level is, and if we think he can get us there. And that's going to be hard for him. I don't know how you evaluate that right now.
How about you, Pete? What are your expectations the next 2 years? What do you hope for? Knowing, we just have probably the best player pool, in my opinion, that I can recall, at least as far as the caliber of clubs that they're on. What's your take on the next 2 years and what you expect at 22 and what would it need to be to go to 26?
Yeah, I think what Shawn said is correct in that the general expectation for him is relatively low. He almost has the dream job. The greatest player pool in the history of the men's national team with the lowest expectations after failing to qualify for the World Cup. That's, I think, the general opinion. My opinion, though, is that if you have the greatest player pool in the history of the program, you should be held to a higher standard. And I think not just qualify for the World Cup, I think in the next 2 years, he needs to find a way to beat Mexico, and he needs to find a way to outcoach Tata Martino. Because if you can't beat Mexico, if we have 3 more goes at Mexico, probably the Nations League final and then 2 World Cup qualifiers. If we don't have a single win in 5 games against Mexico, I'd be a little hesitant to go to a World Cup with that coach because, Mexico's good, but they're not France or Spain or, Argentina. So I do think if you look at the evolving player pool in the national team, as well as the player pool in Mexico, which is actually on the downgrade, their best players are aging. They're still okay for a little bit, but their best players are aging and they don't have a lot of depth. So you look at that front 3 of Tecatito, Jimenez, and Lozano. That's a great front 3. But you take one of those guys out there, it's Uriel Antuna and Rodolfo Pizarro. It's not the same level. Or Diego Lainez.
That hot dog guy's about to be all over you, man.
No, those three are probably better than our front 3. Pulisic is better than them. But if you look at Sargent, Reyna, and Pulisic, I'd take Tecatito, Lozano, and Jimenez. That's a better front 3. But they don't have the depth. And it's the same in midfield. You take Hector Herrera, Andres Guardado, and say Edson Alvarez, or, that's a good front 3. Midfield 3. But you take those guys out, and now you're talking about Jonathan Dos Santos. They're good players, but it's just not the same level that we have coming up. So I do think we need to have higher expectations for Gregg Berhalter. And I do think that even with this young team, we should expect to get out of our group at the World Cup. If Bruce Arena could take us to a quarterfinal, or Jurgen Klinsmann could take us to a second round with that play, when you look at that player pool, actually, Brad, what was his name? The Houston guy, the winger who was on the 24th.
Yeah.
Davis? I can't remember.
His name. It was Brad something.
Specialist.
Graham Zusi and Michael Bradley trying to hold it all together in midfield. Clint Dempsey playing as a forward, like a lone forward. And if we got to a second round with that team, I feel like we should at least get out of our group at the next World Cup. As far as what it takes for him to keep the job after 2022, I think we have to look at 2026 not just as another great World Cup, but the chance to turn America into a soccer nation because it's at home.
I agree.
It's at home. Everybody, we're going to have visitors from all over the world. Americans who never watch soccer are going to be into it. This is a chance, and America likes a winner. This is a chance for us to make a run to the semifinals, at least, I think. And so in order to do that, you want to make sure you give yourself every chance of doing that. That means the best players, the best coaches, the best everything. And Berhalter might be a good coach, but I don't know if he will be the best coach at that time, to take us there. That being said, if he takes us to the quarterfinals of the two, in Qatar, or God forbid the semifinals, I think it'd be very hard for Ernie Stewart and Brian McBride to justify making a change. So we will see. I think Jesse Marsch is the man for 2026. I think just tactically what he can do with this team suits the player pool better than what Berhalter is trying to do. That's just my personal opinion. but I'm leaving myself wide open. We'll see how it
Yeah, a little
goes.
bit.
Right now, let's just get to a World Cup, man.
Yeah,
I'm
right.
open.
Yeah.
Yeah, very cool. Any closing thoughts, guys, on Berhalter overall, or just your thoughts on him in particular as a coach?
I've enjoyed his.
I'm talking a lot.
Oh, go ahead, Sean.
That's it. You go ahead. I'm talking a lot. You go ahead.
No, I've enjoyed that. He's been very straightforward with his communication with the press and with the fans. Sometimes not always to everyone's liking. Like after that Mexico game, he was very, I guess, aggressive in the way he was like, no, I saw a very good game. And we were like, what are you talking about? But he has always been very open and communicative, and he hasn't shut down like we've seen from other coaches in the past. So I will give him that. I think he's trying to do the right thing. I think over the next few years, he has to adapt. He has to learn to adapt to the international game. And I think he's still in the process of doing that. And I hope he can continue to do it.
Good, Sean.
Yeah. So I'm not thinking past this World Cup. I'm not kidding. I mean, I want what you said, and I think we should be there where we can be in contention and conversation with the top teams. That's what we all want. That's what they said. That's what both anybody who's been involved in the program said. They should be in conversation with that in that next World Cup, right? So what that takes from where we are, I have no clue. I mean, we got to get qualified, see how we do, see where, and we have to see this pipeline we have is real. It's not a one-time generation goal pipeline, right? It needs to be continuous. It needs to be coming through. We got to keep buying players from MLS and keep going on the Europe. We still got to see them progress and win minutes and grow up. We got to keep seeing all this happening every year. Okay, we got to see more of McKinney's and Adams and guys so our full team is there, and that's what I want to see. And the coaching, again, we coach, right? Sometimes the horses, and so if we continue to develop, we've got a team with talent of Germany or talent of Spain and all that, then I don't know what Berhalter can do. I don't know that's a whole different world, right? In terms of how we live and how we see the team right now, I can't hardly imagine. So I don't know what's the right people, the right coach for that. But I do think that the goal for the program should be in that World Cup to be in contention conversation with the top 10 team, maybe better in terms of language. That should be our goal and our aspiration. And this should be the teaser for that. This World Cup should be our teaser for being in that conversation. And Berhalter, I think no matter if he can do that, if he can do what he's doing now, build a system, they can play this way we've seen, and be a teaser this World Cup. I don't care what he does after that. He'll be one of the best coaches we've had as a building block for where we want to be, right? He'll lay his mark on U.S. soccer, and that's cool. After that, I don't know he has to be around longer than that. We can find our version of the top coach, whether it's Jesse Marsh or somebody else. I have no idea what Jesse's going to be doing by then. He may be coaching Liverpool by the end. But I don't know if we want to say he's going to be doing U.S. soccer. We have no clue. So point being is I think that I want to see this tease this year, this World Cup, and I want to see it start developing to the next level. And I'm excited because I think we can do it. I think that the pipeline is true, that we've always been U.S., with our resources and our size, the talent is there. Okay, we've known the athletic talent's there. If we have a pipeline to get them over to the top teams that can develop and be seen and continue to go, we can be up there with teams that when we were kids watching these guys, we could never thought they'd be there. And so that's for the fan, man. That's pretty dang cool. Makes me excited.
I know, like Barcelona, Chelsea, Bayern Munich,
right.
Juventus. I mean, the list goes on. I mean, this is an unreal time, and I think we're just cracking. I think we are just scratching the surface of this group, and I think it's going to be unreal the next couple of years. I think I agree with you, Pete, from the beginning. Like, it's frustrating the situation that we're in personally, just like how he came about his job, but he's here. I don't think even losing Mexico, I don't see him losing his job. I think he's our guy for 22. I think the talent pool is unreal. I think they can do some damage, in this next run and 2022. I'm really excited about it. Thanks, guys, for coming on the show. And yeah, it was fun chatting. And I'll tag your sites and your YouTube channel and your Twitter handles as well. Thanks for coming on. It's fun chatting Berhalter with you all.
Thanks a lot, Marcus.